Well, hello. I'm Josh, and I'm back once again with another great film to tell you about. And today I'm going to be talking about Billy Wilder's 1951 classic, Ace in the Hole. Also known as The Big Carnival, Ace in the Hole follows exiled big city journalist Chuck Tatum, who comes to this small town newspaper in Albuquerque, New Mexico, offering to make them rich with his great reporting. The owner ends up giving him the job despite being wary of his loose integrity, and while out, Tatum happens upon a rescue mission of a cave diver and soon realizes, as the only reporter who can get to him, he has first dibs on what could become a national story. And Tatum soon takes this simple rescue mission and tries to drag it out to become the biggest break of his career. Based loosely on the real-life story of Floyd Collins of Kentucky, who became trapped in Mammoth Cave back in 1925, Billy Wilder uses Ace in the Hole to critique the media and the dangers that can emerge when all they crave is grabbing our attention through headlines and sensational stories, as well as the public who gets caught up in the excitement without thinking of the real lives involved. Nowadays, it just seems like we're completely bombarded with scary headlines involving murders, crazy politicians, and new diseases coming up everywhere you look. I mean, just opening up a web browser nowadays, you are immediately overwhelmed with a bunch of headlines trying to pull you in before you can even get to your email. And it's really easy to blame it all on modern day things like social media, the internet, and computers. But when looking at some of these older films, especially ones that deal with journalism like this one, along with Citizen Kane, Sweet Smell of Success, and His Girl Friday, you'll see, oh yeah, this has been going on via the newspapers way before the internet. In fact, the very first film I talked about in this You Need to Watch series, A Face in the Crowd, is also considered quite prophetic in how it predicted some of these cultural icons that can develop an aura and a fan base around them and their image despite often being horrible people behind their masks, and how TV, radio, and other media can create this false sense of knowing someone without even having met them. And while we often look at some of these older films and wonder, wow, they really predicted the future, and wonder how they were able to be so accurate, I think it's also important to note that the reason they were so accurate is because they were most definitely dealing with these very same issues back in those days, though a lot of people really didn't want to admit it. And this is also a pretty big reason why a lot of these films didn't really get much good press at the time. And Ace in the Hole is really no different. Wilder made this film hot off the success of Sunset Boulevard, largely because he knew the movie would likely tank, but he wanted to tell the story so badly that he made sure to do it in the period of his career when he was at his most popular, so he could still get it made. And this is an interesting trend I've noticed with a lot of great filmmakers. Often their most daring and sometimes personal works comes right after a big success when they finally have the leverage to do something they really want to make. Now, these films aren't often a commercial hit. In fact, in many cases, they flop as people expect something much more crowd-pleasing from the new favorite. However, in hindsight, these films are almost always fascinating to me, and in some cases, I may even like them more than the one that originally made them famous. A Face in the Crowd, as I mentioned earlier, came from Elia Kazan and Bud Schulberg, who won several Oscars for their previous film On the Waterfront. Martin Scorsese made The King of Comedy following his huge success with Raging Bull. And I could of course go on, but to bring it back to Ace in the Hole, I just really appreciate how daring Wilder was to make such a dark and gritty film that really leaves you walking out looking at media and your consumption of it in a whole new way. And I like that the film doesn't just outright say that journalism or media is bad. The owner of the local paper is shown to have a very strong moral code and clashes hard with Tatum's attempts to use the media in a way to build up his own power and personal reputation. And as we can see, this quest for power and fame corrupts Tatum and leads him to make some very unethical choices. The consequences of this, Tatum realizes all too late. As the alternate title The Big Carnival suggests, everyone gets so swept up with the rescue as this big event that they forget that there's a real person inside whose life's in jeopardy. It instead becomes a big tourist attraction with Tatum as the star as he ensures that he's the only one able to see the trapped man. So as I mentioned, this story was loosely based on the true story of Floyd Collins, a cave explorer from Kentucky who got trapped in a part of Mammoth Cave. The rescue quickly became national news, and the story was sensationalized in the newspapers, causing people to scramble in order to hear every new update in the papers and on the radio. Much like the film shows, the rescue drew so much publicity, the crowd ended up numbering in the tens of thousands. Vendors, including Collins' own neighbors, began opening up, selling food and trinkets, making it one of the biggest media events in between the two world wars. And Tatum even mentions this story of Floyd Collins to the young reporter Herbie that he's taken under his wing.
You never heard of Floyd Collins? 1925? Kentucky? The guy pinned way down in that cave? One of the biggest stories that ever broke. Front page in every paper in the country for weeks.
Maybe I did hear about it.
And maybe you heard that a reporter on the Louisville paper crawled in for the story and came out with a Pulitzer Prize.
Though he doesn't dwell on the fact that Collins actually died in the cave. And so instead of seeing the situation as an emergency, he saw it as his big break. And so even there, Wilder is showing us that history repeats itself. I mentioned how we think so many of these cycles of media frenzies are brand new because of the internet, but really we are just being exposed to them in different ways, because as we can see here, it's always been around in some form. So to talk about the cast in this film, I really wanted to mention Kirk Douglas, who is of course the star of this film and really gives a fantastic performance here. He was known for playing both heroes and villains, and he really gives a great kind of complicated mix of the two in this film. He's ruthless and cutthroat and trying to push his own career forward, and yet he is also shown to have somewhat of a good side every now and then, and once he realizes his mistakes, he really shows genuine remorse for what he's done, though it is of course much too late. Other great actors in the film include Jan Sterling as Lorraine Minosa, who despite her husband being trapped in the cave, she shows herself to be one of the most corrupted by the money, along with Robert Arthur, who does a great job as Chuck Tatum's protege, Herbie, and one of my favorite character actors, Porter Hall, is in this film as well, playing the newspaper owner Jacob Q. Boot, who kind of rivals Tatum with his more ethical views on reporting. And if you don't know, Porter Hall was a very popular character actor back in those days, who appeared in a ton of other great classic films, including His Girl Friday, Sullivan's Travels, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, along with another great Billy Wilder film, Double Indemnity. So it's pretty neat to see him here. And if you'd like to watch Ace in the Hole, you have several options. It's available to rent or buy from pretty much all the usual streaming sites, and if you want to get it physically, there is a great version I have here from Criterion. And the specific version I have here actually includes the film on both DVD and Blu-ray, which is pretty nice, and it's filled with tons of bonus features, along with a really great booklet that's actually made out to look like one of the newspapers that they've been writing in the film. Alright, so for my comment question, I'm wondering, what is your favorite film about journalism? It doesn't have to be a negative portrayal necessarily. There's tons of other great ones like His Girl Friday, All the President's Men. Samuel Fuller also made a number of great ones, including Park Row. If you can manage to find that, that was a really good one as well. So put your favorites in the comment section down below and start discussing. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you want to see some more of these. Remember to keep watching movies, and I will see you again soon.
Now go on home, all of you. The circus is over.
We're coming, Leo. So Leo, don't despair. While you are in the cave and hoping, we are up above you groping.